Before the world knew his name, before the flashing lights and the red carpets, Chris Pratt was just another young man trying to survive, trying to find a way out of the shadows he didn't talk about, living a life most people wouldn't believe. Long before the Marvel fame and the smiling interviews, Chris was living in a van in Maui, sleeping near the beach, broke, uncertain, and lost. He told people he was living the dream, but that wasn't the truth. Behind his jokes and his easy smile was something much deeper, something darker, something he never wanted people to really see. He was running not just from money problems, but from something emotional, something personal, something that made him question who he really was. People saw him as funny, but funny was just his way of hiding pain. Back then, he was drifting from place to place, doing small jobs and partying with strangers. He said he was spiritual, but he also admitted that he wasn't living right. He was drinking too much, chasing the wrong things, and hanging out with people who weren't good for him. And during that time, something happened that he still doesn't talk about. Something strange. Something that may explain why he never really opens up about his early days. There are stories that have followed him, rumors that started in those years when he lived off the grid. Some say he got involved with people who had secrets of their own. People who lived by no rules, who had no fear, and who believed in things that were far from safe or kind. Chris once said that he was saved by a stranger who told him about God in a parking lot. But what he left out was how broken he was at that moment. Some who knew him back then remember him as wild, unpredictable, even angry at times. Others say he was lost and just wanted someone to notice him. That was the time when he first felt like he had nothing to lose. And when someone feels like that, they do things they later regret. He may have found faith later, but during those days, his life was anything but clean. He got hired at a Bubba Gump shrimp restaurant, where he used his charm to get by. That job changed his life, but few know that even then he was hiding something. The man who discovered him thought he was funny, but never knew what Chris was going through deep inside. There were nights when Chris would sit alone in his van, staring at the ceiling, wondering how his life had gotten to that point, wondering if it was all his fault. He had dreams, but he also had guilt. He had a past he didn't know how to let go of. And when he finally got his first real shot in Hollywood, it wasn't just luck, it was escape. Fame gave him a new face to wear, a new version of himself to show the world. But if you look closely, even today, there's something guarded in his eyes, like he's still afraid that one wrong question will bring it all crashing down. What did he do during those lost years that still haunts him? Why does he never speak in detail about that time? What is he protecting? And is it just about himself or someone else too? People change, yes, and Chris built a new life, one full of love, faith, and family. But behind that life is a chapter that doesn't fit the image, a chapter that feels too dangerous to share. Some of his old friends say they're proud of him, others stay silent, and silence in Hollywood is never just silence. Sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's guilt, sometimes it's a warning. Chris Pratt may be a hero on screen, but off-screen his journey started in the dark. And while most fans only see the light, the truth is, the light was born from shadows he still doesn't want to face. Maybe that's why he works so hard to keep smiling. Maybe that's why the past stays buried. But in this business, secrets never stay hidden forever. They have a way of finding their way back. And when they do, they don't knock gently. They break the door down. Chris Pratt's rise in Hollywood seemed like a dream that came true almost overnight. But when you look closer, there were moments in his climb to fame that didn't feel as perfect as they looked. After living in a van and struggling with his past, Chris somehow landed small roles that slowly pushed him toward the spotlight. His big break came when he was cast as Andy Dwyer in Parks and Recreation, a role that made people fall in love with his goofy charm, his silly jokes, and his relaxed attitude. Everyone thought he was the fun guy who didn't take life too seriously, and for a while it seemed like that was the real Chris. But behind the jokes, something was changing. As he got more attention, people started noticing things, strange moments during interviews, uncomfortable jokes that didn't land, and a quiet shift in his behavior. Some fans started asking questions. Why does he sometimes look tense when certain topics come up? Why do his co-stars act a little awkward around him off camera, even when they laugh on set? Then came the dramatic physical transformation. Chris went from a chubby, funny side character to a ripped, serious action hero almost too quickly. In just a short time, he became the leading man in Guardians of the Galaxy, and suddenly he wasn't just a comedian anymore. He was a star. But with that fame came something else, pressure. A lot of pressure. He was expected to be the perfect role model, the face of major movie franchises, and the kind of guy who always said the right thing. But not everyone believed the new image. Some critics began to call it fake, saying he was trying too hard to be something he wasn't. Others wondered if he had changed or if he was just hiding who he really was to fit the Hollywood mold. His fans noticed the shift, and while many stayed loyal, others started to pull away, sensing something wasn't quite right. And that's when the rumors began. People whispered about conflicts on set, about his attitude behind closed doors, and about how the fun-loving man from Parks and Recreation wasn't always fun when the cameras were off. One actor who had worked with him even said in a private conversation that Chris seemed like he was always performing, like he couldn't stop pretending even in real life. And there were moments when Chris would say things in interviews that felt out of place, like he was trying to speak freely but kept stopping himself. He would pause mid-sentence, glance to the side, and change the topic. These weren't just casual slip-ups. They felt like someone trying not to say the wrong thing, someone who had something to hide. And still, no one knew exactly what it was. But people started digging. They watched old interviews again. They read between the lines. They paid attention to who supported him and who stayed quiet. Some fans began asking why certain co-stars no longer followed him on social media. Others noticed that he was being left out of certain Hollywood circles. Was it jealousy? Was it politics? Or was it something deeper, something more personal? His silence on certain topics only made things worse. He would post cheerful updates and pictures of his new life, but he never addressed the growing unease surrounding his sudden fame. He kept smiling, kept showing up to red carpets, but the tension followed him like a shadow. Some people believed he was just overwhelmed by fame. Others believed he was hiding a side of himself that didn't match the image being sold to the world. And then there were those who claimed to have worked with him years ago, saying that Chris wasn't always so kind behind the scenes, that his charm had another side, a colder side, a sharper one. These whispers were never confirmed, but they kept growing like smoke from a fire no one could see. And with every new role, with every new success, the question became louder. Who is the real Chris Pratt? Is he the smiling hero on the screen, or is that just another mask carefully crafted to cover something he hopes the world never discovers? The transformation from unknown to superstar happened so fast that it left a trail of confusion. And while most fans still see the funny, strong, lovable guy, others can't stop wondering about the things that don't add up. They ask why certain stories vanish from the headlines so quickly. They wonder why some controversies seem to fade before they even begin. It's as if someone is working hard to keep his image clean, but no one can clean forever. The more people look, the more cracks they find. And when you look into those cracks, you start to see a story that's far more complicated than the one being told on screen. A story with unanswered questions, strange silences, and a feeling that something big is being kept from the world. And Chris, he keeps walking forward, smiling like everything's fine. But is it? Or is the past creeping up behind him, step by step, waiting for the moment when it can no longer be ignored? As Chris Pratt's fame continued to grow, so did the questions that people were too afraid to ask out loud, because behind all the smiles, the movie roles, and the carefully chosen words, there was a silence that spoke louder than anything he ever said. That silence began to grow when people found out about the church he was deeply connected to, a church with a strong message of faith, but also a history of controversy that sent shockwaves through Hollywood. It wasn't just about belief, it was about what that belief represented and what it excluded. The church had been accused of promoting views that hurt and rejected certain communities, and when fans discovered Chris was proudly associated with it, they felt betrayed, confused, and even angry. They wanted answers, but Chris didn't give any. He didn't defend it clearly, he didn't deny it. He didn't apologize. Instead, he stayed mostly quiet. And in that quiet, people started to wonder what he really believed and what he was choosing to hide. Celebrities who had once stood beside him began to distance themselves. Some publicly questioned his choices. Others didn't say a word, but their silence felt just as loud. Why was Chris so loyal to a place that had caused so much pain to others? Was it about faith? Or was it something deeper, something darker, something tied to his own past? The truth was that people started to notice patterns in his behavior, how he avoided certain interviews, how he smiled through uncomfortable questions, how he shifted the topic every time someone brought up the subject. And the more he avoided it, the more suspicious it became. What was he really hiding? Was it just embarrassment, or was there a part of his life that he knew wouldn't survive the light? Even when other celebrities defended him, it felt scripted, like something planned behind closed doors to stop the damage before it spread too far. But the damage was already done. Online communities exploded with theories, timelines, and screenshots. Some claimed they had proof that Chris had attended events at the church during times when it was under fire. Others said they had seen old posts that were quickly deleted after the controversy began. Fans felt like they had been fooled. They had believed in his good guy image, and now that image had cracks. And inside those cracks was a truth that no one wanted to admit. That maybe Chris Pratt wasn't who they thought he was. And what made it worse was how perfectly he played the hero in his movies. In real life, people wanted to believe he was just like the characters he played, brave, kind, selfless. But now, everything felt like a performance. People started re-watching interviews, looking for signs they missed, trying to figure out when the image started to slip. And many said the church connection was just the beginning. Some people who once worked near him claimed that this wasn't just a misunderstanding about faith, it was about control, about the system. that demanded silence and about a man who had learned how to say the right things while hiding the wrong ones. And when he did finally speak out, his words felt empty to many. He said his church welcomed everyone, but he never addressed the real accusations. He never spoke about the pain others had felt. He never owned the full weight of what was being asked. And in Hollywood, where people are trained to speak carefully, this silence was seen as a kind of answer. Was he protecting his faith? Or was he protecting himself? Was he afraid of losing his fans? Or was he afraid that the truth about his connection to that world would ruin everything he had built? The questions kept growing, and even though the media eventually moved on, the fans did not. They remembered, they talked, they wondered, and the scandal never really disappeared. It just faded into the background, waiting to return when the time was right. Because in Hollywood, the truth always finds a way to come back. And for Chris Pratt, the mystery of his silence is a shadow that still follows him, no matter how bright the spotlight gets. Just when people thought they had finally figured out who Chris Pratt really was, his personal life began to bring even more questions. And this time, it wasn't just about churches or past struggles. It was about the choices he made with the people closest to him and how those choices made the world look at him differently. For years, fans loved the relationship between Chris Pratt and Anna Faris. They seemed like the perfect couple. Funny, real, honest, and supportive. People followed their story like it was a fairy tale, but when the news broke that they were divorcing, everything fell apart. No one saw it coming. No one understood what really happened. Chris gave short statements, Anna stayed mostly quiet, and the media filled in the blanks with stories that made people wonder if there was more behind their breakup than anyone was willing to say. Then, something even stranger happened. Chris got remarried quickly, this time to Katherine Schwarzenegger, a woman from a powerful, well-known family. People noticed how different this relationship looked. It felt faster, more polished, and much more private. The tone had changed, and so had Chris. He seemed more serious, more careful, more guarded. Then he posted something online that many fans couldn't forget. He shared a message praising Katherine for giving him a healthy daughter. And even though it may have sounded sweet to some, others saw it as a painful reminder that his son with Anna had been born with health problems. People thought the comment was cruel, even if it was meant to be, and it caused a wave of backlash. Chris never apologized clearly, he just tried to move on like nothing had happened. But people didn't forget, they started looking back at everything. They questioned how he treated Anna during their marriage. They wondered if the split was really as peaceful as it looked on the surface. Some even said Anna's silence was not just about privacy, it was about pain. They remembered interviews where she seemed nervous or sad, like there were things she couldn't say. They noticed how her voice shook sometimes when talking about the past. Chris, on the other hand, looked like he had moved on completely, and that made people feel like something was wrong. His social media posts started to look more forced. His smile seemed tighter. The happy family photos didn't calm the questions, they made them louder. People asked why he never spoke much about his son anymore, why he seemed to avoid talking about Anna, why he was always so quick to turn the conversation back to his new life. And behind those questions, there was a quiet suspicion. Was Chris Pratt trying to rewrite his own story? Was he building a new image to erase the parts he didn't like, the parts that didn't match the hero he played on screen? Some people who had worked with him said he had always been smart about controlling what people saw. They said he knew how to win over an audience, how to make them laugh, and how to distract them when things got uncomfortable. But in real life, charm isn't always enough. And for the people who had followed his journey from the beginning, from the van in Maui to the red carpets in Hollywood, the changes didn't feel like growth. They felt like hiding. Something wasn't right. Something was being left out. Some even said the way he praised Catherine so publicly, while staying so quiet about Anna and his son, felt like a message, one that hurt more than it helped. And the more he avoided these emotional truths, the more people started to question everything. Was his rise to fame really about talent and luck? Or was it also about knowing what to say, what to hide, and who to leave behind? The truth is, no one really knows what happened in those private moments behind the closed doors of his first marriage or in the quiet spaces of his family life. But in the world of Hollywood, where image is everything, silence often means more than words. And for Chris Pratt, that silence is starting to sound like a secret, one that could change how people see him forever. As time went on, more people began to feel that the story the world had been told about Chris Pratt wasn't the full truth, and that something important was still being hidden behind all the perfect smiles and polished interviews. Everything about his journey started to feel too clean to control, too carefully put together, like a puzzle where certain pieces had been quietly removed before anyone else could see them. Fans began to look back at his life, at the way his image changed, the way certain things were never fully explained, and they started to ask one question: what is Chris Pratt really trying to hide? From the beginning, his rise was full of strange timing, sudden turns, and moments that didn't feel like natural success, but more like steps on a path that someone else was guiding. He came from nothing, from living in a van with no plan, and suddenly he was not only famous, but trusted with leading huge Hollywood franchises. Yes, he had talent and charm. But many people with talent never make it that far that fast. And some began to wonder if something or someone was helping Chris stay on top, even when things around him started to crack. There were rumors that certain powerful people in Hollywood had taken an unusual interest in him, that they helped cover up mistakes, silence whispers, and protect his brand. But why? What made him so valuable? And what were they trying to keep from coming out? The silence around him became louder than ever, and the moments he avoided, the questions he never answered, the stories that quickly disappeared, all of it pointed to something more than just personal struggles or bad press. It felt like a hidden pattern, like a quiet effort to erase certain parts of his history before they became public knowledge. People began to say that the reason Chris stays so quiet about his past isn't just because it's painful or messy, but because there are things in it that, if fully known, could damage everything he's built. There are still missing details about his connections, about the people he used to be close with, and about moments in his life that simply don't appear in any official story. And the way those details have stayed hidden for so long only adds more mystery. There are people who once knew him who don't speak anymore, people who were part of his early life who have disappeared from public view, and people who may know the truth but are either afraid to talk or have been told not to. And in Hollywood, when people stay quiet like that, it usually means something bigger is going on. Even now, when Chris posts on social media or appears in interviews, many fans say they feel something isn't right. His eyes look distant, his words sound rehearsed, his behavior too perfect to be real. And the more he tries to appear relaxed, the more it feels like a performance that's slowly becoming harder to believe. Because no one can keep a secret forever, not even in Hollywood. The truth always waits, and sometimes it waits in the smallest details, in the stories that don't get told, in the names that never get mentioned. There are still questions people ask that have no answers. What really happened during the years before his big break? Who protected him when he made mistakes early in his career? Why do so many former friends and co-stars avoid talking about him now? What happened behind the scenes of his marriage, and why does he act like it never existed? And most of all, what is the one thing Chris Pratt never wants the world to find out? It's clear now that the story of Chris Pratt is not just a story of fame and faith. It's a story of control, of silence, of a man who may have spent years building a wall between his public image and his private reality. And behind that wall, there may be something darker, something more painful, something that still waits to be revealed. Maybe he's protecting others, maybe he's protecting himself, or maybe he's afraid that if the truth ever comes out, the world will never look at him the same way again. Whatever it is, one thing is clear: Chris Pratt's past is not just a memory, it's a mystery. And someday, no matter how well it's been hidden, that mystery might finally come to light.